All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Through the Whistle Sports. My name is Campbell, and I'm here with my partner, Joseph. And today, the plan is we're going to be talking about some recent NFL news, giving out our opinions on some things, as well as expectations for players this year and players that have this is their last year to prove that they're worthy of being able to keep on playing. So make sure to subscribe because we're gonna keep coming out with NFL and NBA content as the NBA season comes to an end, and the NFL season starts. We're gonna be posting more NFL content, so make sure to stay tuned to that. And so the first thing on the board is Dalvin Cook. And so recently there was a video of him practicing at the wide receiver position, and it made us both wonder about Deebo Samuel and how he was doing the wide receiver running back role and got frustrated with the 49ers because he did not like being that type of hybrid role. And Joseph, what are your opinions on that?
I think it's a lot different. The Dalvin Cook is a running back, right? Deebo Samuel was a wide receiver.
Yeah.
And when you ask a player to shorten their career, like you were asking Deebo Samuel to do when they're making you run up the middle, they're not going to want to do that. Now, when you go up to a player who has been having injury problems for, I believe, the last 2 years now, who has been a great running back, nearly like probably a top five running back when healthy.
Yep.
You then ask him, hey, do you want to do a little less of the thing that gets you injured? What are they going to say?
Yes.
Yes. They're going to say yes. Now, I don't know if they're going to be like having him actually play wide receiver. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think it's going to be a lot more of he's a running back who sometimes goes on the outside and they run play action and all that kind of
Yep.
stuff. Like it just to expand the offense more and trick the corner. Because if a corner is covering Dalvin Cook and it looks like Dalvin Cook's going to come down for a screen pass, but then he books it up the field, there are endless opportunities, right? There's so many different things you can do with that, and that's why Deebo Samuel was clearly like a top five wide receiver last year. He may not be, if he was purely a wide receiver, he may not have been a top five wide receiver, but that makes it super interesting fantasy wise as to
Yep.
what is Dalvin Cook's ceiling for fantasy, because every year the top five picks get injured, right? It was the
Yep.
people at the end of the first round who were getting drafted later that ended up being the best picks. Dalvin
Jonathan
Cook's
Taylor.
currently, yes. Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler was running back 2 last year, and then
Yes.
Derrick Henry was running back 3. The only exception there is Derrick Henry,
Yep.
and we all knew Derrick Henry was going to be a beast whether he got injured or not. Um, what that makes me wonder about is how does that affect where he gets drafted? Because if he gets listed as a wide receiver and he's getting running back touches as well, running backs just generally score more points in full point PPR leagues, right?
Yep.
They get more points because they get more touches. Now, you give a running back who has been top 10 for like for almost every year of his career, what happens when he also gets those big play wide receiver touches and is less likely to get injured because he isn't getting those run the ball straight through the middle at defensive linemen.
Yeah. And I think that specifically the difference here between Debo Samuel and Dalvin Cook is, of course, their main position. Debo being a wide receiver, Dalvin being a running back, and I think that running backs catch the ball more in the open field more than wide receivers actually end up running the ball. Um, so I think that there's a very distinct difference there when you're talking about um, a dual threat in both the backfield as well as in the open field. And I think that it would help out Dalvin Cook more to be that hybrid role more than it'd help out Deebo Samuel to keep that hybrid role. And I don't believe that they'd do that as much. The 49ers would as much this year now that Deebo has expressed his frustrations.
Right,
Yeah.
because running backs get injured more. It's just when I first started watching football, I laughed at that. I'm like, running backs get injured more, right? That running backs aren't valuable? Yeah, right. You watch the game and you see these running backs. A running back gets injured like once every 2 games. If you watch like
Yep.
NFL Red Zone, every 2 hours there is a running back who gets injured. That is why it is so hard for teams to invest first round picks in running backs, and why this year you didn't see it. Now, were there like 2 or 3 guys who you could say were first round talent, like top 32 prospects? Yes, Brees Hall and Kenneth Walker are both top 32
Yep.
prospects, but their positional value is so low because running backs get injured. Now, if you take Brees Hall and you tell him, and you told everyone in the fantasy community, hey, this person is going to be a wide receiver slash running back, the wide back position, where he's not taking it straight into the D lineman. One, he's less likely to get injured. Two, his value is going to be far higher, but not everyone can do it. So I'm interested to see if this means anything come regular season. I think this is going to be something interesting to watch for the preseason. Like actually tune in to the preseason stuff to see, hey, are they actually giving him wide receiver touches? Are
Yep.
they doing like screenplays for him? What are they doing here? Because this could just be him leaking it, even though he's not going to get a different role.
Yeah. And, I was watching during the playoffs, in the 49ers very surprising run to the NFC Championship game and was very close to actually getting to the Super Bowl that year. This past year was that Deebo Samuel was constantly injured and he kept on playing, kept on taking the hybrid role, and he kept on hurting himself. I can't
But
remember what it was.
the interesting thing is Debo was always injury
Yeah,
prone. And that's why he doesn't want the role anymore, because he doesn't want that injury prone label, and he wants that $100 million
yep,
contract that he just saw Tyreek get, he just saw Devontae get. He thinks he's a wide receiver, and he just saw himself put up top 5 numbers, so he wants to get paid like a top 5 guy.
yeah. And I'm not sure now, after he's expressed his frustrations with the 49ers, if they themselves are going to give him the 100 million contract. I think they'd be stupid not to, because
I
of the
agree.
talent that Debo can provide, even just as a wide receiver and doing like wide receiver tosses every now and then. um, but I feel like he was sort of forced into that role not only because of his speed, but also because of
His size.
his size and the running backs on the 49ers. I mean,
The
Trey
interesting
Sermon
thing about
was
Dalvin
injured.
Cook is that he's just so elusive, right?
Yeah,
Debo is 6'3", 225, I believe, 220. He's like that A.J. Brown build. Debo, A.J. Brown, Treylon Burks, they're like clones of each other.
yeah,
They're all 6'3", they're big. But Dalvin Cook is like 5'11", 225. It's like 195 or something. He's shorter, he's more elusive, and when
yep,
you give him the ball as a wide receiver on like screenplays or in um just curl routes, like get him in the open field, he's going to be able to get around. He's going to be able to make the first guy miss. And
yep,
that's something that I think people sleep on when they see him as a wide receiver. They're like, "Oh, wide receiver, he's a running back. Stop overreacting."
yeah. And just one last note is I think that the 49ers, they also had so many running back injuries this year. Um, I'm blanking on his name right now. He went out week one after
Raheem Mostert.
Raheem Mostert, who's now gone. Trey Sermon was injured. Elijah Mitchell played well,
And they
but he was
drafted a
also
guy in the
injured.
sixth round. They drafted
Yes.
a guy in the sixth round, and I think that's going to be a common trend that just happens now,
Yeah.
where every 2 years a team takes someone from round 4 to 7, and they just say, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Top tier running games rarely make playoffs without a top tier defense or a top tier passing offense.
Yep.
So last year we saw a elite rushing game and a top 5 defense miss the playoffs on the last game because their passing offense could not handle it.
Yep.
Their running game got them that far, and I think that is the ceiling of an elite running game. Barely missing the playoffs. Barely. Like the Titans, if they were not in such a weak division, do you think they make the playoffs the past, what is it, 3, 4 years now?
I don't,
I think
I
so
don't think so.
because they don't have that elite passing offense. They don't have
Yeah.
an elite defense. They still have holes at the cornerback position.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if you have who would have been. I still fully believe this, that Derrick Henry this year would have been the MVP if he stayed healthy. But you see that with the Colts. I don't think that Jonathan Taylor should have even been in the MVP discussion, but he put up very good numbers, and the Colts didn't even reach the playoffs because they didn't have much of a wide receiver core. They had Jonathan Taylor both taking passes as well as running the ball.
And when we get into players with a lot of pressure, I think the Colts will come up there quite a few times
Yep.
because of how their last season ended, how they sent their quarterback away. I
Yep.
think they as a team have a lot of pressure on them. But I think the next thing
Yeah. So
probably move on to.
yes. So Jesse Bates is a safety on the Cincinnati Bengals and has been franchise tagged for, I believe it's the second year in a row, second or third year.
Second,
Um,
I believe.
and he does not want to play on the franchise tag anymore. And he has very good talent, um, but he still believes that he shouldn't play on the tag. And people are discussing possible moving of him to a different team, and there are a lot of different teams that could try to make a move for him. If you want to start with the Ravens and
Yeah,
Colts.
so the first thing I wanted to say is that doesn't want what happened to Justin Simmons to happen to him. Justin Simmons was
Yep.
franchise tagged for like 4 years in a row. And he got lucky that he was never injured and he was a cornerstone of that defense. Now, Jesse Bates is more injury prone than Justin Simmons,
Yep.
for sure. But Jesse Bates right now, if he demanded a contract, probably get more than 4 years, 61 million, which is what Justin Simmons got.
Yep.
He's old. Jesse Bates is younger, I believe, right?
Jesse Bates is 25 years old.
So he's at least 2 years younger than him. If Justin Simmons didn't want to play on the Broncos, he could have gotten more than 61 million as a contract.
Yeah.
Bates has two more like long-term deals in him, and I respect him for wanting to go get those.
Yep.
Now, he watched them draft his replacement. Dax Hill is going to come in and be like serviceable. He plays that like slot corner safety role that Jesse Bates has played for them for all these years. But I think you go out there and you look for a team. I know the Ravens were rumored. They just paid Marcus Williams,
Yep.
and I don't know how that works. Oh, they just drafted what's his name? L. Hamilton. Now they didn't draft a
Yes.
safety. They didn't draft like a safety who can play corner because Kyle Hamilton is more of like a box safety. But still question how much would they be willing to give up? And I think the Colts could by far outbid them. The Colts have Julian Blackmon, I believe, is like their number one safety, and I don't know about you, but that's not a lot to be bragging about.
Yeah.
That's like serviceable. Um, and I think that that would make the Colts like a playoff lock, in my opinion.
Yeah, I
If
think
they
that
got Jesse Bates, they're a playoff team.
yeah, and I still think that they have essentially the same core as last year, with the only exception of Carson Wentz being
Switching
traded.
out Matt Ryan and
Yeah.
also a really good draft class. I
Yes.
believe let me figure this out, but I believe like I loved the Colts draft class from everything I remember. Um yeah, so they drafted wide receiver Alec Pierce, who is a 6'3" slot guy. That is very rare to see. This guy is built. They drafted a new tight end as a weapon, Jelani Woods, who was one of those guys who like you watched at the combine and you're like, gotta go watch tape on him.
Yeah.
I don't know who this guy is, but he looks pretty good. They drafted Bernard Ryman, an offensive tackle from Minnesota, who is 6'7", like 360. He is huge. They had an incredible draft class, and if you can manage to only give up like a future third or a future second for Jesse Bates, you're all of a sudden a clear playoff lock and probably one of my favorites to win the Super Bowl. We have not really seen this version of Jonathan Taylor in the playoffs.
Yeah, and
Imagine
that
you hand it off to him every single time. What team is stopping that in the AFC right now? All these AFC teams have elite offenses, but what one of them has an elite run-stopping defense in the AFC.
yeah.
Chargers come closest.
Yeah.
I still don't love their linebackers as far as run stopping goes. So once he breaks through that first layer, there's no telling what he could do, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think that a clear example of that for Jonathan Taylor this year was against the Buccaneers. They were down by 10 to 14 points, I think, and it was 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and they started running the ball and they started giving it to Jonathan Taylor, and actually brought them back and got them close to winning that game. And that just
Someone threw it
shows,
away.
yeah,
Someone threw it away.
yeah. Carson Wentz threw it away.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's what happens when you give the ball to Jonathan Taylor. Uh,
You come back into games.
yes, absolutely. And I don't. That was not the only time that happened this year. Um,
But that
against the
time,
yeah,
okay, against the Jaguars, they were not giving Jonathan Taylor the ball. Okay, that
they
were,
he had 77 rushing yards. That was against that team,
the
and
other team we just mentioned though, Chargers.
the Chargers.
Do you
Yes,
imagine Derwin James and Jesse Bates as a
that's
safety core?
That's already a pretty elite defense, probably one of the best in the AFC.
They're willing to spend the money. We know they are.
Yeah, and I think
Derwin James
yeah,
is a very good run blocker. He's been okay in the pass game the last few years. He's still riding off like that elite athleticism and that
yeah,
one great play every few weeks. But if you get a real lockdown free safety who can also play that like slot corner role, um, with Asante Samuel on the outside, I think that defense just becomes like wow.
yeah,
You have like a chance to go on a real Super Bowl run with
yeah.
him. Um,
Especially with the good offense, it's not great, but it's also not mediocre in the
I mean, when you
sense.
have a top five quarterback,
Yeah,
I'd say if you have a top 10 quarterback, regardless of your receiving core and
yeah,
offensive line, you have an opportunity to be a potential top tier offense.
yeah,
So while I don't love Keenan Allen this past few seasons. While I don't love Mike Williams as a wide receiver two, and while I don't even know who their wide receiver three is,
Yeah.
that core is still pretty good given who their quarterback is.
Yeah. And speaking of a defense that is going to be very great in the next few years and would be much better if they went out and tried to get Jesse Bates, is the Philadelphia Eagles. And
I love what they're building.
I do as well. And for me personally, I am an Eagles fan. Um, and I know everyone questioned Howie Roseman throughout this entire thing, but
Rightfully so.
and rightfully so, absolutely. But what he's traded away Carson Wentz. He has thrown, or not specifically thrown, but they lost a Week 17 meaningless game against the Washington football team. I think it was 2 years ago, and there was one other thing, but he's turned that into multiple future first round picks, multiple future second round picks. AJ Brown, Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean is by far the easiest steal of the draft. I mean, because they're saying that it was just a strain. I trust what they're saying with that.
I don't. I don't. I think he needs another surgery. I
Well,
do. I think he's
even if he does, that's still the biggest steal in
still
the
a.
third round.
I think it's a very good pick, but when you have a linebacker who's missing a whole year in their first season, it's like, okay, how long can we wait for them? And my answer is as long as you want.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
Nakobe Dean is that level of a prospect. I had him listed as linebacker 2 or 3, I believe. I had Devin Lloyd over him. Um, but that is like the only concern is that he's undersized and that pec tear will, or strain, or whatever they're saying it is, will lead to more issues with tackling.
Yeah,
Um, because that's what it is, right? When you tackle, what are you using? You're
yeah,
using these. And if that continues to be an issue, he might not reach his full peak. But as a run defender,
yes,
the Eagles
absolutely.
might have the best run defense in the league. It's going to be the easiest, like when it comes time for fantasy football. If you're a running back who's not like a clear top 15 running back,
Yep.
you're sitting that running back when you have to play the Eagles. You're like, nope, not doing that. That is why so many people are fading Antonio Gibson this year.
Yeah,
It's because he has to go up against the Eagles defense. He has to go up against Micah Parsons, and he
yep.
has to go up against Kayvon Thibodeau, and like just is such a hard run of it this year. Um, but Jesse Bates on this team, I think it would make it a Super Bowl contender for the next 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, and what I'm honestly thinking is, when Tyrann Mathieu was released by the Chiefs, I really wanted him to go to the Eagles. I was pulling for it the entire time. There
I think
were
Tyrann Mathieu's a little bit overrated. I think Jesse Bates is far better, and I think
either way, he would have been he would have been a nice culture guy. He would have I think he would have fit this team well, and but getting Jesse Bates, he's much younger than Tyrann Mathieu. That would make the Eagles defense so great in the next coming years. With the signing of Hassan Reddick, Kazir White is not the best by any means, but he's not.
he's a starter.
He's
a
a
starter.
starter. Nakobe Dean, which with whatever is going to happen with him, and then you've got some more aging guys, but are still great. With Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, and then you also have
Have
Josh
just a
Sweat.
great rotation. You
Yeah.
don't have to tire anybody out on that defense. And that leads us to the next thing, which is just the signing of James Bradbury. Darius
Yes.
Slay and James Bradbury are arguably the best 1-2 punch at cornerback in the NFL. Now, I
Yes.
would still take Marcus Peters and his name's gonna blank me.
It's blanking mine as well. Hold on. Yeah.
Everyone knows what I'm talking about. The Ravens corner. I would still take them over him. I
Humphrey.
might still take whoever you want to call cornerback two on the Rams, just because Jalen Ramsey is that good. But when you take into account just how good James Bradbury was just 2 years ago, it's really hard for me to not say that's incredible.
Yeah. And I think not even with the defense, um, just one other thing is that they drafted a backup center. Um, and I'm just going to make this really quick, but they drafted a backup center um, because Jason Kelsey, this is probably his last year. And I think this was a perfect time, even if it was somewhat of a reach, to go for a backup center, to have him learn behind Jason Kelsey. Um, and they they still have a very good offensive line, even though it's aging. Um, but I think that they've taken a lot of risks with their offensive line, and some of them have drastically failed, like horribly failed, and then some of them have actually worked out very well. And I'm excited to see what that rookie center is going to do in the next coming years once Kelsey retires, and that's going to be interesting.
Gonna have to pause it after I say this, but one of the things with the Eagles draft that I had an issue with is that they got their replacements
Yep.
for everybody over 33. That is very hard to do in a singular draft, especially if these guys were like vetted by those players at those positions. Fletcher
Yes.
Cox vetted Jordan Davis.
Yes.
What's his name?
Uh,
Elsie vetted
Cam
Cam
Jurgens.
Jurgens. Yes.
Yes.
Um, I was concerned with the corner position because I thought Darius Slay was good. I have loved Darius Slay since he was on my Lions. He cannot play corner, and they have for in guard all three wide
Yeah.
receivers on the field at once. And when you get James Bradbury, my concerns go away.
Yeah.
Pause it.
All right, and so next up on the board is unfortunately Tariq Cohen, and I watched this guy, um, and his running back play and his kick return and punt return play was so good when he was on the Bears, and he tore his ACL. That was very unfortunate. And then just recently he failed his physical to come back and like was cleared for play, and he failed that. And recently on his when he was live on his Instagram story working out, he ruptured his Achilles. And I feel so bad for him, not only because of his talent but just as a person. Just you you have to think, like, after a torn ACL and you're trying to get back from that, and then you rupture your Achilles. Like, I watched the video, and like I can actually hear the pop, and that's just, I can't imagine the pain that he went through. And it didn't even seem like he was in pain. He was just so upset because he knew what had just happened. And I think that was so upsetting to watch when I looked back at that. Yeah. I don't have anything else to say.
Yeah. So a few things. Tariq Cohen is 5'6", I believe.
Yeah,
And when you're that short and you play the running back position, as we talked about like for a good 10 minutes already on this podcast,
yeah,
you get injured. Now, I have questions. I don't want to be starting any like conspiracy theory things or anything, but he was clearly on Instagram Live to prove to people, hey, I'm good for my ACL tear.
yeah,
Like, I'm fine. I'm able to do this.
yeah,
Did somebody like encourage him to do that? Was he
yeah.
truly ready?
I'm not
Like,
sure.
okay, he might not have been ready to come back from do those jumping exercises he was doing.
Yeah,
There was a video of like the full live stream. There was like 20 minutes beforehand where he was just jumping and he looked hooked. He looked tired.
yeah,
Like I question whether he was truly ready to be out there doing all those like um plyometric exercises.
yeah.
I truly do question it. Now, I don't think there's a single person who is going to be not rooting for Tariq Cohen.
I I don't think so either.
He has the opportunity to retire, get insurance for 5 years from the NFL. I was listening to the Pat McAfee podcast, um, and he was saying he doesn't think he's going to, but if this has been too much mentally, because if anyone who plays sports, they know that when you consistently get injured, it is
Yep.
demoralizing. You don't want to keep playing anymore. Sometimes you're like, I can't, I've had enough. If Tariq Cohen is at that point, he can retire. I believe he gets like 750K for the next 5 years or something. It's like some really good, solid number. And then he gets insurance to
Yep.
help him rehabilitate that knee. Now, do I think he will? No, because you don't leave what running backs get in the open market, which is like 3.5 million on the table at age 26.
Yep.
But if I were him, I would strongly consider it because you are 5'6", you play the most wear and tear position in the sport, maybe not just physically, but also mentally. We forget that these people are humans.
Yeah.
Like the amount it takes to get ACL tear, MCL injury, Achilles tear, it's painful. And like I don't know if you know this, but the Achilles, when it tears,
Yes.
it goes
Yep.
all the way up to like the back of your knee, and you look at that, you're like, what did I just do to myself?
Yeah.
And you start to have serious questions like, was what I'm doing to my body worth it? Do I
Yeah.
want to be able to walk and like walk around with my grandkids in 30 years? You know what I mean? Like these are serious, these are people.
Yeah.
They're life choices. They're not just, oh, NFL player, go play football, right? This is not like shut up and shoot or whatever that whole thing was with basketball players a while back.
Yep.
Um, yeah, that's all I have to say. Hope he does well.
Yep.
Hope he recovers fast and can make whatever life choices he feels like making.
Yep. Absolutely. Um, and then coming off of that,
Feel
basic.
good story or a
Yeah.
feel bad story. More feel bad stories and Deshaun Watson.
Yep.
Woo!
So Deshaun Watson, I'm not gonna say why we're talking about him because everyone should probably know by now.
If you don't know, you're
Yeah.
like 7 years old, or you are just getting
Yep.
into sports, and you can literally look it up if you are just
Yeah.
getting into sports. If you're
And
7, please don't look it up. But if you're
yeah.
just getting into sports and you don't know why Deshaun Watson could potentially be suspended, just look it up.
Yeah.
I
And
think he's gone for at least 6 games.
yeah. But here's the thing in the first place. He hasn't played for what, 1 or 2 years? Like I don't
I don't try. No, I trust him to be good. I think Deshaun Watson is like a he's Joe Burrow with more athleticism.
I just don't know because he was out of the public spotlight for all of that time. And
He wasn't though. His
well,
trials, there were videos that kept getting leaked. It's like I believe he is capable to be an NFL quarterback, but I don't like him as a person. I don't like
yeah,
what he did, but he is incredibly talented.
yeah,
He
and
knows what he's doing at the quarterback position. And I think there might be one or two games where he struggles to get back in rhythm, but you know what? It's going to be hidden by the Browns' run game.
yeah, with Nick Chubb, and yeah,
Kareem Hunt,
yep,
that's just, I mean, if he wants to throw 5 times in those games, think they can't run the ball every play?
yeah. And if if he was working out this entire time, then I think that he'll do just fine. But I don't. Up until his he was found not guilty, we didn't see many workout videos from him, which makes sense because of
I
what
think
was
was
happening.
Yeah, I think it was purpose. I think his attorneys didn't let him release much, like, oh, I'm still ready.
Which
Like that's
makes
it's
sense.
insensitive. It's insensitive to
Yeah.
do that or like to release that. But
If he was still doing that, then I think he'll do just fine.
so I have a question for you. Do you think Baker will play for the Browns if he is suspended? Let's say he gets suspended for 8 games, 8 regular season games. Do you think Baker will play?
No, I
No?
don't think so because I love Baker Mayfield and I think his immaturity at some points, like Jalen Hurts, this entire offseason has been there have been rumors that Desean Watson is coming. They're going to draft a quarterback, and he stood by and didn't let go and didn't ask to be traded at any point during that time. Now, as soon as something happened with the quarterback position in Cleveland, Baker asked to be traded. Baker went on social media and said stuff, and that's I don't think that I feel like he's gonna be more petty than put the needs of the team first if they need him at that point.
Okay, so
Um,
do you think the front office would ask Baker? Do you think they'd even ask for him to play?
I think they would. I think that
Okay,
they'd
and
expect it from him.
if they do, what do you think? Okay, if he doesn't play, do you think he gets traded? Do you think we will ever see a Baker Mayfield start again if he decides I will not play for the Browns this year?
He will absolutely get a starting job somewhere. Um,
I
maybe
think he'd
not.
be like the 32nd quarterback though. That's my point. Like I think what it could be is either Seattle,
Yep.
Atlanta, Tennessee, New York. The thing about
Yes.
all those teams is that they have young guys who they might want to stick with if they see development this year.
Except
They
for Daniel
also
Jones.
they are all teams who could potentially have top draft picks this year to select a Will Levis, a Bryce Young, a CJ Stroud. Those are 3 quarterbacks who I feel like are kind of locks to be top 10 picks at this point.
Yeah.
Not to mention there are like 2 guys in the later rounds. So even if those teams miraculously come out of nowhere and are like win a wild card game, are still opportunities for those quarterbacks to be replaced in the draft. I think if Baker sits out while Deshaun Watson is suspended, I think unless the Seahawks and Drew Lock throws like 10 picks in the first 3 weeks and they decide to trade for him, I think that it is over for Baker Mayfield as a starter.
And that's That's I agree with you, but that's what sucks is that he isn't the worst quarterback of all time. He is one
Oh,
of the
he's not.
best. He's one of the best that Cleveland has had in so long. He took him to the AFC divisional game and could have gotten to the AFC championship game. And
And I hate the Browns fans who say we got there in spite of Baker, not because of
yeah,
Baker, because that year
that
Baker was
was
not bad. He was not bad.
yeah,
He was not like a top 10 quarterback.
yeah,
You're not a top 10 franchise, okay?
yeah.
So relax on calling Baker bum. Like it's
And he's
out.
absolutely the best quarterback that they've drafted in the past 20 years. Easily.
Oh, Johnny Manziel for sure. Like
Yeah.
no, it's Baker.
Yeah.
Baker's, which is sad because like I don't want to get into it, but if they have Jacoby Brissett as their quarterback for the first 8 weeks, how many games are they winning?
They won they won 3 or 4 just because of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt.
Think they're able to win that many?
I think so. If we saw we saw it in the regular season against the
Let me read
Packers.
you their schedule. Okay, Deshaun Watson is suspended for 8 games, right? So game one, Carolina Panthers. Do you think they pull that one out? I think they can pull that one out.
Yeah.
That is one win. New York Jets.
Yes.
You think they pull that one out? The Steelers
I'd say no.
in Cleveland. I still think they
In
can't pull it
Cleveland,
off.
no.
So that's 2-1. The Falcons. That's 3-1.
Yep.
I'm Chargers. That's 3-2.
Yep.
Patriots. They're not gonna
No.
let you run. They're not.
No.
That's 3-3. The Ravens. That's 3-4.
Yeah.
I'd say the Ravens are gonna win that one. Then the Bengals. That's 3-5.
Yep.
So maybe you're right with that prediction. Even if but we know what Jacoby Brissett is. We know he could throw that away.
Yeah.
Now, what I could foresee happening is Mitch Trubisky plays really well for like the first 2 or 3 weeks. Jacoby
Yeah.
Brissett is terrible, and Mitch Trubisky gets traded from the Steelers to the Browns. Kenny Pickett takes over the starting job, and Mitch Trubisky becomes the temporary Browns quarterback.
It that could happen. I don't it depends on what the Browns would have to give up because I
It'd
think
be
that
like a fifth rounder. It would
yeah,
not be much.
because they could very well choose to ride it
But they're
out.
not going to tank this year, though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And like, maybe it's a Gardner Minshew. Maybe it's one of those moves where,
Yep.
because like, but someone who doesn't have a starting opportunity at their team. But I don't think Jacoby Brissett is going to win you any games. I think if anything, it's just starting him in general. You're risking losing games.
Yeah.
I'd rather give up my fifth round pick and get like even if it's like Geno Smith, even it's like Tyler. I'd rather have Tyler Huntley than
Yeah.
Jacoby Brissett. As maybe dumb as that sounds, Jacoby Brissett is not a starting caliber quarterback.
Yeah.
I would argue he's like on the lower half of backups.
Yeah, and I think that I mean, I don't want to go too far back just because of time, but like the when he was on the Patriots and he
Mm.
was their third string and
Or maybe it's
yeah.
Jimmy Garoppolo. Maybe
Yeah.
Jimmy G gets cut and they pick him up. But I don't see
I don't
Jacoby Brissett making it through an 8-game suspension if Deshaun
know.
does, in fact, get suspended.
Yeah.
Um, I think we can move on
Yeah.
to players who need to have an impactful season this year.
Yeah.
Make it or break it years for players who have important things
Yeah.
coming up. You can go first.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go somewhat quick on this because I want to keep this at about 1 hour. But I have 4 players to talk about. So the first one is Carson Wentz. As an Eagles fan, I really love Carson Wentz. He is the reason, not the only reason, but one of the main reasons they won that Super Bowl. Even though Nick Foles got them there, I I won't get too far into that. I think that this is his last chance as a starter to prove himself because he has running backs who are gonna have tough matchups this year, but they're still exceptional
Good
running
running
backs.
backs. Yeah.
Yes, and he has a good young wide receiver core, um, and the team isn't terrible. I mean, they were pulling off wins with Taylor Heineke as their starting quarterback last year, and I actually thought that they could have um, gotten into the playoffs, and then they
If they
folded.
if they win the same amount of games as they did last year, it is a disappointing season from Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz
Yep.
needs to will them to at least 2 games because
Yeah.
that's the thing. When Carson Wentz is playing his best football, he looks like God himself. When
Hmm.
he's playing his worst football, it's like, why does this guy have a job?
Yeah.
I could do better than this. So if we can get 2 or 3 games where
Hmm.
Carson Wentz wills his way and he can decrease on those very common games where he just throws the whole thing away,
Yeah.
I think Carson Wentz could keep that job for maybe another 2 years.
Yeah.
And 2 years with that roster, the defense that that team has, the defensive potential that that team has, I think is enough to get Carson Wentz like a real Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like you gotta prove something to me this year, otherwise I just simply can't keep you around.
Yeah. And I think that and I'm gonna move on after this, but his ACL tear, like before that, he was athletic. He was like Josh Allen before Josh Allen was as good as he was, because he was big and bulky and he could throw the ball downfield and he could juke away from defenders. Like he got into a huge pile. It was against Washington. He got into a huge pile and everybody thought he got sacked, and he could have very well gotten injured because that was
Everyone knows that
yeah,
play. Every time Carson Wentz
yeah.
has a good game, ESPN posts it.
And then he just somehow zipped out of that and got a first
And
down.
the caption is always, "Is this Carson Wentz back?"
No, yeah,
Oh, no.
it's not. No, I don't think that we'll ever see that version of Carson Wentz back because of that ACL tear.
Yep.
And I'm gonna go through these last ones pretty quickly. Jalen Hurts. I don't think that should be his year to prove. However, I do think that it is. Peyton Manning on the Colts, it took him 6 years to get to the playoffs, and his third year wasn't his year to prove it. That he could be a championship caliber QB on a team. But I think that with so many additions this year, that if they don't get far, they're gonna consider even more to change their QB, which I don't think should happen just yet.
If they miss the playoffs, Jalen Hurts should be moved on from.
If they miss the
Because they are,
playoffs,
yes, they are in such a weak NFC. Almost every team in the NFC, other than teams who had a ton of draft capital, got worse.
yeah,
So, like, I'd say the Lions got better. I'd say the Vikings didn't get better. The Packers didn't get better. The Bears didn't get better. The Giants they stayed the same because they cut James Bradbury, and we all know
yep,
they're not trying to win, right? The Cowgirls got worse. Like, the Commanders, I think, got a little bit better. There's just like there's like 2 teams. There's like one team in each division that got better, and every other team got worse.
yeah,
Right? Like, Rams got worse. The Cardinals got worse. They're gonna miss D-Hop for 6 games. There's just the Niners. They stay the same. It's like you made it last year, and if you miss it this year, whose fault do we really think that's gonna end up being? Is it gonna be the defense?
yeah, no,
Without an unforeseen regression from every old player on that team, it's gonna be Jalen Hurts' fault if they miss it. So if he misses
yeah.
it, I think a Jalen Hurts plus picks for um, Kyler Murray deal is very likely.
And I think that they have one of the easiest schedules this year.
Yes, that is the other thing.
So they could be they could very well be the top of one of the top teams in the NFC, and that's not hyperbole, and that's not because I'm an Eagles fan. Their
No, I
schedule
agree.
is so easy that they could be the number 3 or number 4 seed. Um,
Mhm.
Easily division winners. And then my last two players are Christian McCaffrey. Through no fault of his own, I think that this could be his last year to prove what he's capable of. It's just his injuries happen every year. And I mean, it's not even going to bring up fantasy in this because he keeps on getting drafted very high and he keeps on getting injured. But even then, he was injured for a lot of the year this year, and then he comes back for 1 to 2 games, and they give him a huge workload immediately, and then he gets injured again and is out for the year. And I mean, if you have anything to say about that,
No, I think everything's very clear. A lot of people know Christian McCaffrey at this point is just a lot. There's a lot of injuries.
yeah,
We know when he's healthy, he is a top running back in the league, but he has not been healthy, and that's all there is to say.
yeah. And then my last player is Saquon Barkley. He was injured for some time this year, and then when he played, he was just not the same Saquon Barkley that we saw in his rookie year. It may just be because of the roster that he's on and how bad it is, but it could also be early regression from Saquon Barkley,
I
and
think they have a very improved offensive line. I think Evan
yeah,
Neal is going to step in and immediately be impactful. I think Andrew Thomas, we can expect a step forward from him. And that interior is still pretty meh, but I think um, they've made efforts and they have younger guys there, and I think that they can take a few steps forward. And that new offense, that Brian Dable offense,
yeah,
I think there's something there.
yeah. And so with something being there, I think that this is Barkley's last year to prove that he can still be the top running back that he was when he was a rookie. And then I'm gonna pass it over to you.
But
Uh,
two other guys from the Giants that I think are on their like prove it years. Kenny Galladay.
yes,
He got paid like 4 years, 78 million. And at the time, I'm like, look, the Lions have no money on our books. Why aren't
yeah,
we just matching that? Boy, was I wrong.
yeah.
Boy, was I wrong.
He
He
didn't even
has
score a
been
touchdown, did he? He scored
no.
one or something.
I think he got like a rushing touchdown or
Yeah,
something. He didn't get a single touchdown all year. Um, he needs get a touchdown. Um, Danny Dimes. Look, I think it's likely that even if Danny
yeah,
Dimes has a better year, he still gets replaced because there are like
yeah,
4 or 5 quarterbacks in this draft class. And if this was a better quarterback class, I think Danny Dimes is gone.
yeah,
But Brian Dable is going to have a free flowing offense. He's going to give Danny Dimes every opportunity to show that he still has something left in the tank. Mitch Trubisky never got this opportunity. Other bad quarterbacks, Sam Darnold, never got this opportunity. He has a free flowing offense with an improved O line, a running back who has potential to be top 5, with a receiving core that is deep. There are
yeah.
like 4 receivers there who are like wide receiver twos on other teams. If he sucks this year, if he does not take a major step forward, he is getting replaced. He is.
I still don't know how he hasn't been replaced in.
There just isn't anything in this
Yeah,
class. We've seen the other guy who I wanted to talk about is Kenny Pickett, the only quarterback taken in the first round of this class. If there was 2 in the first 2 rounds, believe that's right. I think
I think so.
oh, he
Yes.
was 1 in the first 2 rounds. Um, because what's his name? Uh, Desmond Ritter was early day 3,
Yes, that's
or like
correct.
late or early day 2, round 2. Um, if he comes in and he is abysmal, like they snap their streak of going 500 or better, right? Like they have since what's their coach's name has been there. The Steelers have not gone less than 500. That is an
Yes.
incredible streak, and if he is the one to break that, that's gonna get held over his head throughout his entire career. Like if he becomes like a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback, people are gonna be like, well, he's not that good because his team in his rookie year, like they're gonna make jokes. It's just gonna be a constant thing that's held over his head. And other two quarterbacks that are seen as jokes right now, Tua and Zach Wilson. We all saw the Tua video. All saw it where he underthrew Tyreek. I don't know how their social media team didn't see that. You're setting him up for failure. Look, Tua has gotten so many new weapons. Like if he fails this year, he's just not a good quarterback. It's that simple. Zach Wilson, if he has to get his team to the point where they don't have like a top 10 pick. Because if they have a top 10 pick and there is a Will Levis, if there is a CJ Stroud, a Bryce Young on the board, you think they're passing up on that? If he has that 10 touchdown, 11 pick season he just had, he's gone. He just needs to show some improvement. Some improvement.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are saying, oh, the Jets can get like 9 or 10 wins. And I'm like, back it up. We all just watched the same quarterback last year.
Yeah. Even if he looks like rookie Carson Wentz, I think that they should try to keep with him.
Yeah, if he shows glimpses, he needs to just show more, right?
Yeah.
He just needs to show something. And a guy who is going to have a ton of touches, by the way, is Cole Kmet,
Yep.
tight end on the Bears. Look, there are two players in that offense. It is Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet was solid last year. If he can stay healthy, he is going to be an incredible, not only fantasy tight end, but I think he has potential to be like an actually good player, which is hard to say because I don't like the Bears, but I do like Cole Kmet. Other guy, Trayvon Walker, the worst number one pick in centuries, is what everybody has been saying. And they're right. They're 100% right. I do not expect him to do very good this year.
No.
If he does not get, if he, like, okay, let's say Aiden Hutchinson has a 12 sack season. That is like up, that's very high for a rookie. If Trayvon Walker then has 6,
Yeah. I don't know how Aiden
every,
Hutchinson was not first overall.
I don't know how, Kayvon Thibodeau is not first overall, but, every article will be talking about Trayvon Walker, number 1 overall, had half the sacks of the number 2 overall pick. Ha ha ha, so funny. And he will not live that down. He will be Jacksonville will be Jacksonville, right? It's not Saxonville. It's like he will not live that down. And I mean, they let go of a guy in Miles Jack, who is another player who I
Yeah.
want to see something from this year, so that they could sign Aluakon and free up a little bit of money to sign Trayvon Walker as the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah. That's
Like everything's lining up for him to be like, even if he's the next coming of Jesus Christ, still like not enough for me to be like, all those moves were worth it for Trayvon Walker.
I don't think so.
Um, Guys with contract years, Miles Jack, Minka Fitzpatrick, Ryan Burns, Jameson, or Jameis Winston. Those 4 guys, they need to play their hearts out. Jameis Winston looked like a top 16, top 15. Like he looked like an upper tier quarterback when he was playing. He now has, who does he have? He has Chris Olave, he has Jarvis Landry, he has Michael Thomas. Those are 3 receivers who he did not have last year. And if
Yep.
Chris Olave is like the Chris Olave I saw in Ohio State last year, he better have like a 4,000 yard, 30 touchdown season.
Yep.
He doesn't have that. It's like, okay, you're gone. We're drafting someone. Ryan Burns, he wants to be paid like an upper tier edge rusher. But right now, it's like other than rushing the edge, getting a few sacks here and there, destroying Teron Armstead every once in a while, what do you do super well? He needs to be consistent.
Yeah.
And if consistency is key when you're trying to get paid, Minka Fitzpatrick has been consistent his entire career. Last year, he was terrible. And I like Minka Fitzpatrick. He's one of my favorite players to play with in Madden, but last year he was not good. That secondary was abysmal, and he played bad in a contract year, and now they're refusing to pay him, not giving him an extension.
Yeah.
It's going to cause drama. That's going to cause issues in the locker room. He needs to step it up just a little bit. My last one, our hometown pick, is Jeff Okudah. Okudah was a top 10, he was a top 7, top 6 pick. I believe he was 6. That is incredibly high for a corner. He's coming off an injury, but right now, I would say the only weaknesses for the Lions are quarterback, corner,
Yes.
linebacker. Our offensive line is top 5. Our receiving core is upper echelon, especially if Jameson Williams is who he was in college. Our
Yes.
running back, DeAndre Swift, and that's a great like 1-2 punch. The D line with if Aiden Hutchinson is who he says he is and who we have seen him be, that is great. We drafted Kirby Joseph, the safety out of Illinois this year. I expect him to be very good. Maybe Jeff Okudah has a bad year and we don't draft a corner, but I would be shocked. There are very few weaknesses left on this team, and if Jeff Okudah does not step it up this year, he is the odd one out.
Yep.
That's it.
All right. Do you have any closing remarks? Otherwise, I think we should just wrap this up here.
The usual like and subscribe.
Yeah. So that is it, everybody, for today's episode. Once again, we're gonna start doing more NFL as the NBA season comes to a close, as well as some stuff that we've already started to work on. So stay tuned for that, in terms of NFL content, and we're gonna have NBA draft prospects coming up pretty soon. So make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications for that. And other than that, we thank you for watching and hope you have a great rest of your day, night, whatever time it is for you. And
Like and
we'll see you.
subscribe.
Yeah, like and subscribe. And we'll see you on the next episode. Have a good one.